how on earth do you review a cycle computer that's £550? Well, I think we start with the basics, and that is, yep, first of all, it is massive, but kind of got used to it. It is heavy. It's about 170 grams heavier than my normal cycle computer, which isn't insignificant. And it is 550 quid, which is about the same price as an Apple Mac Mini. So the only thing this has to offer above and beyond what's on the market currently, apart from a few really cool features, is this little Aero sensor right here, which tells you your wind speed. Now, what can that possibly offer us? Let's get into it. Okay, here's our key piece of data. Up here is our current speed from the GPS, and this little box here is what the sensor is picking up. And because it's blue, it's about neutral. We're going a similar sort of speed to the headwind in the front of my bike. What have we learned on day one then? Well, I can see myself using this on my big cycling holiday to the Alps, Grand Fondue, a cyclist sportive. Can't really see it ever being used in a race situation. I think it's just too big and too heavy and too expensive to risk crash damage and all that sort of thing. But I also think you might see it used as a training aid, because the amount of data and feedback you're going to get, it's got to be worth considering.
Try to keep it so still, but the wind blows. Oh, the wine, the wind
I don't think it helps that today there is not a breath of wind. It is probably one of the stillest days. I mean, look, the grass isn't even moving the tiniest little bit. So I'll see you back here on a really foul day. There's got to be one soon. Well, it's the end of November. It's freezing cold outside. The roads are all icy. And so this seems like a pretty good time to do a half-time reflective check-in, I guess, on how I'm getting on with this fancy new device. Probably done 3 rides now, a couple of indoor rides, and I've gone through that whole setup, that initial like how does that work idea, and I'm starting to get to grips with it. And I'm also starting to understand my contribution to the YouTube sphere in this as well. And I think that DC Rainmaker is still going to cover all the features bit by bit in minute detail, and I don't see any point in replicating that. The thing that I'm most concerned about is how can it make you a better rider, or how can it make your life easier, better, more comfortable? And I'm starting to get a pretty good picture of that. Now, I want to get straight into this Aero device, because this is probably what's going to get everyone's attention. What the hell is it doing there? Is it a gimmick? I am actually a big advocate of this. I like it, but it's not going to be what you expect it to be. And I think it's going to get into quite a lot of heavy criticism, because it doesn't give you a CDA number. Now, CDA, coefficient of drag over frontal area, is something that's bounded around a lot in cycling without us all necessarily understanding what it takes to actually calculate a CDA. Now, this comes back to my criticism in general of a lot of cycling computers, where they use a lot of what I'd call derived metrics as opposed to actual measured metrics. In fact, Garmin are really bad at this, because they tried to calculate your VO2 max and your nutrition strategy based on sort of algorithms and bits and pieces. Clever, yes, but they seem to be creeping and adding features for features' sake without necessarily backing it up with any sort of measurement tool. So I'm kind of applauding Wahoo for actually adding a sensor that will give us an actual measured metric as opposed to something that's just guesstimated. So back to the CDA thing, and that is
there are various apps and calculators, or estimators if you like, where you can take your power data and your route and the wind weather data of that day and form some sort of estimate of a CDA. This has got a sensor for that. We have a power meter on a bike. We can probably make some assumptions like rolling resistance, frontal area, to give some kind of a CDA number. And I think a lot of reviewers might focus on the fact that that's missing. The more that I have used this, the more I can understand where Wahoo have come from. You see, what you're going to get your airspeed, I'm going to call it airspeed, the wind speed, the speed of air actually hitting the sensor, and your actual speed. And it's using those two numbers to give you an idea about whether you're getting a drafting effect or whether you're hitting a headwind. Now, those two things aren't all that useful. One, you know pretty well when you're in a headwind, right? You don't need a computer to tell you that. And also, you know when you're getting some kind of a drafting effect. You don't need a computer to tell you that. The interesting thing for me is that grey area in between. On here, it will show up as a blue area. And this is where I think this device has a lot of potential, but it hasn't got it yet. You see, what I would like to see is a really clear delta between the airspeed and your ground speed. I know that I'm mixing aviation terms a little bit. If that's confusing, let me know. Hopefully you get to know what it is I'm actually talking about. And I think it's the differential that's important. I've asked them about this. They are considering it, but generally they've got a lot of ideas that they want to build into this. We'll see if that comes or not. The reason why I think the delta would be more important to me, the delta as in the difference, is because when you're actually on a flat piece of road, you can then start to experiment with your position. Maybe it's going to need like a 20-30 second smoothing or something, so that as you tuck in, can you see whether you're at least making an improvement or whether your positional change has made it worse. That to me would make a really good coaching thing that you could then take into a more of a race situation where you have your lighter unit. I like stuff that gives you feedback that accelerates the learning process, and I think this has potential, but it's not completely unlocked potential yet. So to answer my question, is it a gimmick? At the moment, yes, but I think it won't take very much for this to be incredibly useful, is probably the answer. Okay, while I'm here, how about just general usability? Because I think this is where a lot of people are going to have different opinions. Personally, I really like it because I like the fact that it hasn't fallen into the trap of just feature creeping, adding features, and the menu system becoming slow and bloated and heavy. This still feels to me like very simple to use, getting maps onto it, getting routes onto it as simple as ever, being able to navigate the screens. It's definitely the clearest display to use. The touchscreen is a little bit laggy. It's nowhere near as bad as a Karoo, but it's nowhere near as snappy as an iPhone. I like the fact it's a matte display, so even in winter sun, I've been able to read it really clearly, something that I can't do on a Karoo. It's probably comparable to a Garmin, although I'd say actually looking at the numbers is a lot clearer on the Wahoo. So yeah, usability wise, I personally really like it, and I think this needs a bit more testing to really fully understand what this is actually giving us that's new. Right, back on the road. How I've got my display set up right now, this top one is my current speed, and that little arrow in the top left hand corners tells you whether my current speed is lower or higher than average. And the one that's lit up blue right now is the current airspeed, the air hitting that sensor at the top there, just hitting a little gust of wind there. And then we've got how many kilometers I've done so far. So early in the ride, 23k. My total riding time, kilojoules. I don't have a power meter today. It's normally a pretty important one for me. My current heart rate, and then my zones, as you can see, mostly zone 2 today, but quite a lot of elevation in today's route, about 1500 meters, so that's going to go up a little bit. And then watts, clock, and the current air temperature, which is
10 degrees. There we go. What do you keep on your main data display? Let me know in the comments. Today we have a definite headwind. Look at this. Now what I've been learning is, one, yes, my position can affect the numbers, but also I've been kind of using it to find an optimum pace, because the faster you go, the more the effect of the headwind, and also balance that against my heart rate, my metabolic output, and find almost the optimum speed of which to attack this headwind. I wasn't expecting that. Somewhere around 25 kph, a heart rate of 160, it's almost my threshold pace, but as I go faster, the effect of that headwind, my heart rate goes up, but I don't go much faster for it. Right, bit of practice, and I think I found something like optimum. So down in the drops, around 25 miles an hour, 154 beats a minute seems to be where I get the most speed for my buck, if you like. Interesting little battle with the headwind. In all honesty, that is probably something that you could know by feel and experience. It's nice that the numbers you see correspond with how you're feeling. It always gives you some sort of reassurance, because that means it's got some sort of validity as a training aid for less experienced riders, or rides when you're tired, or when you need to fine-tune things. This is shaping up to be way more useful than I thought it would be. Right, this will make you laugh. Now, this device actually has a built-in bell, but I'm gonna have to stop and show you how it works. So right now we're on a narrow little pathway, but next to the dual carriageway, so where you can hear the cars. Now, they've built in a bell, but how you activate it is by quickly double tapping the screen. Oh yeah, hang on. So you have to be on the data screen and then tap it with a naked finger. Chocolate teapot, anybody? Oh my god. That ride got pretty wet, but you'll be wondering, did it actually ever get a tailwind? Well, not according to this. Sorry, a bit wet. This is heavy air boost of 3 seconds. Light air boost of 6 minutes 35 compared to 50 minutes almost spent in somewhat of a headwind. Did manage to do some quality zone 2 training though. Okay, back to the studio. So for all you sports science geeks out here, let's come over to our little cupboard of devices and see how well it connects. This is something that the Garmin ecosystem always excelled at because of its app store, and Wahoo have been making big moves to try and build a lot of this sort of stuff actually into the unit from the start. So on this table we have lots of MOXIEs, so these are the muscle oxygen sensors. We actually have 6 of these. That is quite important when you're doing testing, because you tend to want at least one on each leg, one on a non-working muscle, and you might be testing 2 people at once as well. So being able to connect to 2 or 3 of those is really important. We also have the Train Red. This does muscle oxygen in a different way. It connects to this absolutely no problem. What's really nice is the Wahoo heart rate monitors. If you have a Wahoo one, it actually comes up with a little like icon to let you know which one it's connected to. All other heart rate monitors like Polar, etc., all connect just as you imagine, but just give you like a heart icon. What is quite cool is they must have a little tie-up with core body temperature, because it actually comes up with the little logo of core body temps, and you just add that. And that's probably the easiest way of pairing core body temperature. Really impressed with that. It's also connected to all the various kicker rollers and the kicker shift bikes in here, and come up with a nice little logo. Really, really impressed with this. And it will shift all that data onto training peaks for you. But what is kind of lacking is it hasn't integrated very well with its own system. So all of this data you can't really read within the Wahoo System X. And also I've got the System X workout playing here, and you can't connect
the actual head unit to the Wahoo System X, and therefore use this as some sort of controller to either skip an interval or change your FTP or the intensity, or even pause the workout. You still have to do that using your mobile phone, which is a real shame, and hopefully something that will sort out, because it'd be so much better to have this on the front of your bike than trying to have your mobile phone stashed on it. A couple of other cool features which you are going to appreciate having this. One is it will play music, so if you are on the turbo trainer, you can skip through all your music and turn up the volume, press pause, etc. But also it will connect to your GoPro as well, and you can actually control quite a bit. You can change the mode from video, photo, time lapse, press record, press stop, see how much recording time you've got left. So dead handy if you've got a GoPro mounted to like helmets and that sort of thing. Feature I found really useful as a content creator. Not necessarily for everybody, but and probably better than it was on the Wahoo Elemnt Roam. Right, can we bring this video to some sort of conclusion? You see, when you lay out all the main contenders in this category, there is a massive difference between the Garmin 530, 540 and the Wahoo Elemnt ACE. Look at that, it's absolutely massive. This is where most people start their cycling computer journey, and absolutely rightly so. You get an awful lot of features for your money. It's nearly always on discount. The menu system is an absolute pain, but you do get all those third-party apps. It pretty much does everything you'd ever want it to. The Elemnt Roam, therefore, came along, slightly better screen, better navigation, makes it a lot easier to get routes and stuff onto it from various different mapping sources. The 1030, 1050, therefore, always got saw as a bit of a nice upgrade from this little one here. You've got the touch screen, you've got the bigger screen, makes it a bit easier to navigate all that complicated menu system. Then along came the Hammerhead, and this works very well as a navigation aid, connecting well with Komoot, but it doesn't really play well with lots of sports science devices. So it's definitely a very, very valid option, and I'm looking forward to what they develop that into. But the Wahoo Elemnt ACE came along, and there it is. It is £100 cheaper than the Garmin, but it's also 100 grams heavier. Now, that puts you in a difficult position, because one day you'll be riding next to your buddy and he'll be saying, why did you spend all that money on that carbon handlebar, that 3D printed saddle or whatever, and then go and put on a 210 gram head unit on your bike? And then you have to justify whether the features of this are worth that extra 100 grams. And for that, I feel I need to address who I think this device is for. I don't think you're going to see this on the front of any pro riders' bikes at the Tour de France, but I do think you might see them use it in training. Well, really it's designed for people like me, middle-aged riders who like their endurance riding. I like the fact that I can use a variety of different mapping software that I can share with friends no matter what platform they're on, get maps onto here very quickly and easily, reliably navigate them. The user interface is very easy to use, and the display is really clear to see as well. And I like the fact that it very easily connects to lots of different sort of sports monitoring devices to help me pace my ride and track my fitness. Now, as to whether the Aero sensor is worth the 100 gram weight penalty, well, we shall see. I don't know.